Welcome to the Office of the Leader of the Opposition press conference for May 18, 2023. Permit me to introduce my panel from my right. To my right, there is none other than Mr. Ganesh Maipal, Member of Parliament. To his right, the Leader of the Opposition and the People's National Congress Reform, Mr. Aubrey C. Norton, Member of Parliament. To his right, Ms. Coretta MacDonald, Member of Parliament. To her right, Mr. Sherwin Holder, Member of Parliament. To his right, Mr. Leland Saul. And to his right, Mr. Elson Lowe. Welcome. Today's press conference the statements will be read in a few parts, and we will begin with the reading from the Leader of the Opposition.
The opposition supports the local chicken industry. Banning by itself cannot solve the problem. We in the opposition support the local chicken industry. We are, however, concerned that the government has made banning imports its only policy decision in this very complex matter. Banning is only one option open to governments to help and sustain local industry. Banning by itself cannot solve the problem. The government's standalone ban on imported chicken is a manifestation of its incompetence and confused policy making. Depending on who from the government one listens to, there are different reasons given for the ban, from health concerns to smuggling to the need to protect local farmers from competition. Nowhere in the various explanations do we detect any concern for the likely surge in chicken prices on the local market that a ban on imports would trigger. Nowhere do we hear the government express concern over the impact of a ban on the already high cost of living. As all Guyanese know, chicken is the meat of necessity for many local income households. Banning as a standalone measure will result in an increase in local chicken prices, and therefore there has to be other measures to ensure we protect the industry while at the same time ensuring that the cost of chicken does not go up. The government's proffered reasons for the ban expose its simplistic and inept thinking and planning. Firstly, the ban is intended to address a smuggling problem. If that is so, then why isn't the government announcing a series of anti-smuggling measures? Not only will a ban on imports be totally ineffective, it is likely to create even more smuggling, since rather than legitimate chicken importation, there will be the intensification of underground importation. So where are the countermeasures by the government to combat this likely development? Second, if this ban is intended to address imported chicken health concerns, then a ban that increases the amount of chicken smuggled into Guyana will only exacerbate the health risk, as legal importation is replaced with totally unregulated activities. If the government genuinely wanted to take action against a potential bird flu threat, it should have done so in early January when PAHO issued its warning. Now, several months later, we may have already been exposed. This too little, too late approach smacks of a government that is asleep at the wheel. But if concerns about health risks are the reason, then the government must say if the ban is a temporary one until the threat of an outbreak abates. Third, if this ban is intended to protect local producers from foreign competition, as the Minister of Agriculture has indicated, then this is a completely wrong-headed approach to industrial policy. To lower local costs, the government should remove all remaining taxes from local chicken production, take measures to lower the cost of feedstock, including removing taxes from soybeans and corn, which are critical to feed production. The government must offer more technical support to farmers as well. To expand local chicken production, Measures should also include easy access by producers to low-cost startup and development financing. In addition, small chicken farmers should be given grants in a structured and non-politicized way with the aim of making them competitive while reducing the cost of production. In keeping with our policies outlined in the Leader of the Opposition budget speech, this is an opportune time to take measures to promote chicken production in regions 1, 7, 8, and 10, where chicken production lags behind in demand. This will bring down the cost of chicken in those regions. Finally, a ban on imports to protect local industries opens the door for similar government action for other imported products. We do not believe that in today's free trade environment, this bodes well for Guyana and Guyanese. Bans on imports can trigger retaliatory embargoes on Guyana's exports. Bans on imports will also create a protectionist environment that will delay or discourage the uptake by local producers of new technology, new processes, and input materials, and the use of efficient supply chain and marketing techniques. Consumers will pay the ultimate price in the form of high cost and low quality of goods. This matter has exposed the PPP's inability to deal with complex social and economic development challenges and clearly makes them unfit to govern in this modern era. The people of Better Hope need services. The people of Better Hope, a PPP-controlled NDC, is crying out for service to the community. They engage the opposition and bemoan the fact that many of their roads are in a state of disrepair, especially the street they call Hassa Street. Residents said that the government on more than one occasion came and measured the street but never returned to undertake the road works. Residents said that they are tired of government and PPP-controlled NDC promises. In addition, the residents complained that their drains are not being cleaned and that the community experiences serious flooding and a very unhealthy environment when it rains. Residents are demanding that the drains be cleaned in order that the water can flow, noting that a while back, the drains were clean, but the water still does not flow. A number of residents noted that the PPP continues to promise better services to APNU controlled municipalities and neighborhood democratic council, but it fails to deliver these basic facilities to one of its strongholds. The residents said it will be stupid for APNU strongholds to trust their word. The leader of the opposition undertook to represent them on this issue and to work with the people of Better Hope to ensure they get good quality service.
Okay. At this time, this other half of the statement will be read by Mr. Leland. Sorry.
Belgium residents urge to remain vigilant as CDC operatives denounce government's tyranny. The opposition condemns the action of the PPP activists at Belgium, which is a clear case of power-drunk politicians agitating for unsavory responses from law-abiding citizens and an attempt to sow seeds of division among villagers. At approximately 1600 hours on Wednesday, 17th May 2023, a team of PPP operatives led by Minister Sonia Parag descended upon the Community Development Council's property at El Dorado Village, West Coast, Berbice, with the intention of imposing an interim management committee.
Go to reading.
Okay, so their presence resulted in the disruption and suspension of grade 6 lessons that were being held in the building. Consequently, scores of angry residents converged at the location, venting their anger and disgust at the PPP's wanton abuse of power. Only 2 weeks ago, Minister of Local Government Nigel Dharamlal spoke at a public meeting at Paradise Village, West Coast Berbice, informing those residents that the government is responsible for operation of all CDC. He also claimed that he is empowered to effect managerial changes where he felt necessary. It was reported by some residents who attended the forum that the minister has expressed a desire to orchestrate a CDC that is managed by the PPPs by PPP activists. The residents of Belgium reject the minister's contention and warn him that he is provoking unrest in the community. Thus, opportunity is taken to inform the nation that the honorable ministers that the Belgium CDC is a registered trust and is currently conducting its operations and programs on a portion of land that was leased from the neighborhood Democratic Council. When the APNU and AFC government was in power, the CDC obtained grants from several organizations, including the central government, the United Nations Development Program, IPADG, and other NGOs for the execution of several projects, including the construction of buildings. This is a legitimate body that should not be removed by this dictatorial administration. The attempt by Minister Parag and known PPP elements to illegally impose an IMC on Belgium CDC is a flagrant violation of law and is indicative of the PPP's continuous disregard for the rule of law. The APNU has advised the members of the CDC and the residents of Belgium to remain vigilant and protect their interests at all costs. It is obvious that the government ministers are not only spiteful, but woefully misinformed pertaining to the status of the CDC.
Thank you. Now we'd have the reading from Ms. Coretta McDonough, Member of Parliament.
A coalition government will introduce a national family policy. Last Sunday, May 14th, and Monday, May 15th, Guyana joined the World Society to celebrate Mother's Day and International Day of Families, respectively. These two observances call on us as a nation and as a people to reaffirm the centrality of mothers and families in our society and to address their well-being, aspirations, and unmet needs. Despite these obligations, we did not hear any reports by the government to inform us of the state of the family in Guyana. International Day of the Families would have been a fitting opportunity for the government to so report, especially after spending hundreds of billions of the country's oil wealth. After two national oil budgets, the nation would have expected to hear from the government: one, how much the incomes of families increased, if at all; two, how many families have crossed the poverty line and have attained economic security, if any; three, how many additional mothers have access to child care facilities, if any; four, to what extent have maternal and infant mortality rates dropped, if any? When would five, when would government cash transfers stop? When would government cash transfers stop being sporadic, one-off, inadequate, unpredictable, and politicized? And six, how does the government plan to address wider issues that impact families, such as opportunities for vendors, most of whom are single mothers, the excessive and unnecessary incarceration of husbands and breadwinners, domestic violence, workplace practices, and gender inequity. The PPP cannot report on these issues because they are only concerned with enriching themselves. Not surprisingly, we heard no such statement or statements from the government, and we do not expect any from the PPP. This is where we starkly differ from the PPP's approach to national development. The PPP sees infrastructure development as the salvation for Guyana, while the APNU AFC will promote infrastructural development. Our key focus will be on putting people first and investing in them. We will pursue our people centered development strategy. Already, we have publicly announced several family oriented plans. Our early childhood care and education policy, which was proposed in November 2022, for example, speaks about such benefits as one, stronger and happier mothers and families, two, greater social justice through gender parity or equity, three, better socially adjusted children who are less likely to engage in deviant and criminal behaviors as they age. And four, expansion in GDP through greater female participation in the workplace and higher productivity from female workers. Our minimum livable income guarantee is aimed at eliminating the curse of the working people and poor families from our society. Our rent to own and rent assistance schemes are aimed at increasing the living standard and quality of life of families. Addressing the well being of families will require a holistic and sustained effort. This is why, in our International Day of Families message, we, as the next government, announced that we will look to design and implement a national family policy. Such a policy will uphold the family as the basic unit of society and include a wide range of initiatives that directly and indirectly improve the quality of family life. Our vision is for Guyana to become one of the best places in the world to start and raise a family.
Thank you. And now the final part of the statement will be read by Mr. Ganesh Michael, Member of Parliament.
PPP making false promises, showing no interest in local democracy. It appears as though the PPP has just awoken from its slumber and making false promises to transform Linden, Georgetown, and New Amsterdam. The PPP does not allow the elected councillors of local democratic organs to function in interests of their communities and is therefore unsuitable to manage local government areas and promote local democracy. The PPP incompetent and corrupt regime seems to forget that for 21 years they held no local government elections and imposed IMC's interim management committees on these local authority areas. The PPP track record shows that they do not believe in local democracy. Their interest is in domination and control so that it can make the PPP elites, friends, families, and favorites richer at the expense of the people. The PPP needs to be reminded that they did not come to power from some vacuum in 2020. They were in power from 1992 to 2015 and 2020 to 2023. What that means is that the PPP had 26 years to transform those communities, and rather than doing so, they stifled local democracy. It is therefore an idle promise for them to now be offering to transform these communities. Their track record does not give people hope. In fact, over the years,
The PPP has starved these communities of resources and discriminated against them. The PPP actually said, through the then Minister Kelwan Lal, that they will leave Georgetown to stink, and stink it was under the PPP. It was the APNU AFC that cleaned and drained Georgetown between 2015 and 2020, thus reducing the high level of flooding. Georgetown is back to flooding under the PPP. All Bartitians know that it is the APNU AFC that brought genuine development to that municipality. The PPP could have made Bartica a town. It took the APNU AFC to make it a town and transform the community. The PPP had 23 years to transform Bartica, and they did not. Why should we believe they will? They simply will not. It must be recalled that in 1992, the PPP inherited funds from the PNC government to rebuild the Suicide-Linden Highway. Through the then Prime Minister Samuel Hines, they said the road did not need repairing. The PPP left the Suicide-Linden Highway to fall apart. The PPP failed the people of Linden. It was the said PPP that plunged Linden into blackouts after they sold to one of their cronies the generator that served Linden. It is also useful to recall that in 2020, the APNU AFC left in place a plan and resources to build a new bridge across the Demerara River between Mackenzie and Wismar in Linden. The PPP abandoned this transformative project. The APNU AFC procured resources to build the Wismar to Mabura Road. The PPP was abandoning this road project. It took the international community to force them to go ahead with this transformative project. The PPP was not prepared to build that road. Were it not for the opposition exposing their sinister plan and the insistence by the international community that this road must be done, the PPP would not have been moving ahead with this project. What is evident is PPP discrimination against these communities. Madhya also faces the same fate under the PPP regime. In these local government elections, it needs to be stated that the PPP has no interest in the development of Linden, New Amsterdam, Georgetown, Madhya, and Bartica in Alaya. Its interest is in getting political control so that it can access and take the waterfront and other properties in these towns and give them to their elites, friends, families, and favorites. 70th anniversary of the National Assembly. On the momentous occasion of commemorating the 70th anniversary of our elected assembly, let us reflect upon the remarkable journey that began on the 27th of April, 1953. It was during this time that general elections were held, marking the advent of the universal adult suffrage and use of the first past the post system. Our founding leaders, Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham and Cheddi Jagan, joined forces as the pre-1955 United People's Progressive Party, garnering an impressive 77,695 votes, or 51% of the valid votes, securing 18 out of the 24 seats in the House of Assembly. Forbes Burnham, representing Georgetown Northeast District, served as both a member and the first Minister of Education under the esteemed speakership of Sir Eustace Gordon Wolford, OBE, QC. Over the past 7 decades, our National Assembly has evolved into a body comprising 65 elected members, including 25 geographic members of parliament. However, despite the passage of time, one would have anticipated a mature and civil parliament. Regrettably, we find ourselves unable to offer such affirmation today. Our parliamentary institution, intended to be the epitome of democracy, where strong representation is collectively championed for the benefit of all our people, is marred by many challenges. Under the current administration, the opposition is compelled to battle daily to uphold the essential safeguards of our democracy and consistently expose the biased and unbecoming conduct of the Speaker. The Speaker's foremost responsibility is to uphold order and decorum, acting in the best interests of the entire House rather than a particular political party. He fails to honor this obligation. As we celebrate the 70th milestone of our elected assembly, we take this opportunity to implore the Speaker of the National Assembly to embrace neutrality and unbiased behavior. It is only by doing so that all of our people will be represented, allowing us to develop a democratic society. This 70th anniversary affords us the opportunity to take stock and to place our parliament on a democratic trajectory and serve all the people of Guyana. Let us use this significant occasion to make the change and promote the rule of law, democracy, and good governance. The practice of these principles will place us on the path to restoring democracy in Guyana. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I will open the floor for questions on the press statement. Of course, as is customary, by the raise of hand and stating your media houses. Mr. Adam Harris. Mr. Harris, I see your hand.
I am muted. Sorry, I was talking to myself then. Sorry.
Okay.
Two questions. One for Comrade Leader, one for Ms. McDonald. Comrade Leader, first on the ban of imported chicken. When imported chicken came into this country at the time, local chicken production was supposed to be at the point of self-sufficiency. That is what was said. Could you offer a reason why there was imported chicken to the extent that chicken is banned, and how much chicken do we import in any given period, a month, a year? I don't know.
All right.
Ms. McDonald?
Sorry.
Yeah, Ms. McDonald, I'm interested in some of the things you had to talk about. But then the president talked the other day about giving teachers what's due to them. Was there any discussion with you on this?
Okay. First of all, on the question of chicken, it is evident to all that the government has mismanaged the sector. Over the years, we have been producing enough chicken to satisfy our demands. The government should have known that with the coming of Exxon Mobil in oil production, etc., there will be more people coming to Guyana. and therefore there will be a greater need for production to satisfy. It is evident that they did no planning. That's the first thing. We have outlined in the press statement the various options or the various reasons they gave for dealing with this issue. Now, from that, should be evident that the government did not analyze the situation properly and looked at the various options. It does appear that they decide, okay, in the absence, with the income of foreign chicken, it will affect the local industry, and therefore the solution is to ban. But the issue, as we have outlined, is more complex than that. If you ban without mechanisms to increase production, etc., what will happen is that the price will go up, cost of living will go up, and our people will be in trouble. What we have done today is to suggest to the government that you cannot take one policy approach to the issue. There is need for one, yes, to save the local industry, but they have other measures that will help you to do that, including bringing down the cost for feed, including putting more people in production, including expansion in production in regions that import, for the want of a better word, from other regions. And so the problem is the government lacks a comprehensive approach to dealing with the question of the chicken shortage in Guyana.
Yes, I could just follow up on that, Adam. So we import about 3 million US of chicken products annually. But really, what is something that is unfortunately missing when the government discusses these issues is any conversation around the productivity of the chicken industry here in Guyana and a drive towards ensuring that our production will be, as leaders indicated, low in cost and competitive in nature. Now, the government can continue to work given the various measures that we've suggested, in particular in areas of financing and in helping chicken farmers to be able to leverage better technologies and to expand their operations to be able to compete with these on a cost basis. Because ultimately, for any industry in Guyana, we want those industries to be productive industries. We want those industries to be capable even of export, rather than having to resort only to a ban on the industries.
Quick follow-up, please. Now, if we are spending $3 million US on importing chicken and chicken products, what then is the volume of the local market? How much chicken do we eat? Do we eat, even if we say it's 50-50, do we eat $6 million US worth of chicken a year in this country?
Well, Adam, the production of chicken in Guyana, there's about 600 farmers and millions of birds being produced. But what we must keep in mind is that this is a dynamic situation because the economy is, of course, expanding due to the oil and gas sector. And so what we need really is a strategy to ensure that we are, one, producing enough that we can satisfy the local market, but two, producing at a cost that is competitive. And this is one example, but there are many different areas where ultimately, what we should be focused on is getting those costs down. Also, it is important for us to recognize that as we look to diversify Guyana's economy away from just being from such a focus on the petroleum sector, this is the strategy that will apply across the board. So chicken is one example, and this is a dynamic situation that I'm sure the demand will continue to expand as the population expands in the country and so on. But ultimately, if we don't have a kind of comprehensive plan to deal with these issues, then these problems will unfortunately persist.
All right, Ms. Coretta McDonald, the question.
Mr. Harris, thanks for that question. First of all, let me say, backing up to the years when the PPP were in office from 2006, we have experienced a group of people who always come on the scene and they behave as if they're Columbus's brothers and sisters. So they are just discovering new things. The GTU would have had an agreement with the Ministry of Education / the government of Guyana since 2006. As a matter of fact, the package, the proposal that would have been submitted came as a result of our engagements with the PPP government in 2006. All that has changed in that package are numbers, because we've looked at inflation over the years, and so we increase our numbers. What the president has said recently is what they do all the time. They make, when they see large crowds of people, they get excited and they make all kinds of irrational statements. The president made a pronouncement recently without even having any consultation with the GTU. As a matter of fact, over a month ago, the GTU met with the government very hurriedly. They called us to a meeting because they recognized that our general counsel was going in a different direction. And so they hurriedly called a meeting with us. 1 month after that meeting, as a matter of fact, let me say to you, the persons representing the government at that meeting were the Minister of Governance, Gail Teixeira, Minister of Education, Priya Manik Chand, and Minister of Public Service, Sonia Parag. The two ministers, Parag and Gail Teixeira, they had no idea of what they were coming to that meeting to discuss. So we were at that meeting lecturing to them as teachers what the entire package entails. 1 month after we agreed that we were going to meet yesterday, which was the 17th, on the morning of the 17th at around the 6:15 or somewhere there, a call was received indicating that the minister who spearheaded the meeting yesterday was unavailable and that meeting is now being rescheduled. So this is the government who is operating today. Very unpredictable, don't know what they're about, but like everything else, they get excited when they see people and they make lots and lots of irrational statements.
Thank you.
Adam, I just wanted to build off of that. If you look at Ghana's national budgets from 2018 to now, you've seen the national budget almost triple in only a few years. The government's behavior when it comes to dealing with our teachers, when it comes to teacher compensation, when it comes to supporting teachers, is utterly shameful. In only a few years, you have tripled the national budget, and the government can't deal properly with teachers and ensure that they are compensated. This is utterly embarrassing, and I hope that it comes to an end shortly.
Thank you.
But it's not teachers, it's all public servants. Teachers only one element.
All right. Any other questions on the press statement?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
my question has to do with the situation at Belladrum, Mr. Leland South. And perhaps it's for all the panel. I cannot help but notice that the government is just about it's all over the place. It's in just about every community. Is there any evidence of perhaps a counter challenge to this thing? They go down to Belgium and you talk about attacking the CDC. I see they were in from the Leaders Village Pleasance talking a lot and having a lot of people there. The same thing in Linden. What is going to be the party's reaction overall to all of this focused presence of the government in these communities that they're not known to visit?
I think I should deal with this question. First of all, yesterday when it occurred, I was in Belladrum. We have been on the ground in all these communities. What the government is doing is playing optic politics. They are taking the 10-day workers, they are fetching people around, and they're carrying them to places like Pleasance, etc. And then they put it on Facebook as if the people in those areas turn out. That is not the case. In many of those areas, they fetch the persons. For instance, the Linden meeting We are well aware that they took 25 persons who they paid from Kokwani and took to Linden. One of the things you must do is when they have these activities, go and see the amount of vehicles that are parked there. If the people come from the community, what are all those vehicles doing there? That was also the case in Pleasance. Yesterday at Belladrum, to be precise, at Paradise where the thing occurred.
Eldorado.
I should go.
Eldorado.
No, sorry, Eldorado, but I should go back. The day before, we were in West Coast Bobis. The PPP was there. What they don't tell people is a lot of the villagers chased them. And it happened yesterday. It happened day before yesterday that many of them were chased. And this isn't restricted to our strongholds. They went into, I think, number 7, which is supposed to be a PPP stronghold. And they were chased. So what they are doing is trying to create a facade that they have this large-scale support. But I know they are starting to come down from the pedestal. I heard, for instance, Jacques Dio, who's a liar, and before I go there, let me deal with him. I think he's mentally ill. I cannot understand how a man knows that he was born 1964. He knows from the very Chronicle newspaper that they manipulate and control that Amelia's Ward was opened by Forbes Burnham in 1969. Yet this man, who would have been 5 years of age when Amelia's Ward was built, will repeat that he built Amelia's Ward. And when he arrived there were no houses. It has to be a madman. I don't see how a normal person could know in this era, when you could fact check something, will continue to say something that is completely stupid. It makes no sense, and it does him no good, except that he doesn't understand that it does him no good. So the People's Progressive Party approach is optics, lies. I mean, I don't think Jack Deo can now define the difference between truth and a lie. It has become interwoven into his fabric. And so our response has been not a recent response. We have been working on the ground. And even as they carry on their optical illusions, we have had people all across the country working on the ground in Bartica, etc. I noticed Joe Hamilton joined Jack Deo in coming off the high horse. When Jack Deo was asked recently about Linden, he's saying whether we can win in Linden, New Amsterdam, etc. I noticed Joe Hamilton last night telling Freddie Kissoon that he doesn't live in a world of illusion. They don't think they will win in Georgetown. The people who win in Georgetown, who will vote in Georgetown, are the matured and experienced people. Is he implying that the people the PPP are targeting are immature? And when you see what they did with those take young people who will know nothing about Georgetown under the PPP and put them to say for 50 years, X, Y, and Z happened. You understand the nature of the People's Progressive Party. It is not a party that wants to operate based on fact. They believe in their fiction, and they believe they can use public relations to achieve their objectives. We will continue to work on the ground. We have had a lot of, we're getting a lot of successes on the ground across all areas. And I think the PPP is very concerned about their own strongholds, because as you go into their strongholds, you're hearing the rejection of the PPP. Like I said, I was at Better Hope. And what people of all ethnic groups said to me, and what is interesting, is that very few of them want to be on camera, and they tell you that the PPP is instilling fear. Yesterday, when we were on the West Coast, a particular Indian family signed in support of one of our candidates, and they continue to harass that family every day, as if to say, you don't have the right to sign and support a candidate. And so while they talk all of this, they are operating based on the installation of fear, the misuse of government employees, among other things that they are doing. Our strategy is to continue to work on the ground, carry our message to the people, and we are satisfied we are going to beat the People's Progressive Party in these upcoming elections in the areas that they are also claiming that they will win. But we will see.
Thank you. Any other questions on the press statement? Okay. So at this time, I will open the floor for any other questions. Mr. Jevon Vickery.
Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, everyone. Javon Vickery, guidance standard. Now, yesterday, we spoke with Ms. McDonald, who's on the panel, and one of the things that she made mention of was the government's intention to get ahead of a possible strike action by teachers with regards to what is being going on currently. I know Ms. McDonald had provided some details on what happened yesterday with the meeting, but I want from the opposition leaders specifically about what do you think about what is happening with regards to teachers. I know I asked you this before, but specifically this possible strike action that is being hinted at, do you think that this is something that might do you think that this is something that is needed at this time?
First of all, the government's approach is not to the teachers alone. It's to the entire public service. The government has no commitment to giving the public servants a better life. The mere fact that they continue to persist to divide the public service, or they're going to give bonus to the military, but none to the teachers and the public servant, establishes that they believe in divide and rule. First point to be made. The second point to be made is that this government has never given to public servants anything above 6%, except the only time that they appointed an arbitrator, and the arbitrator handed down. And after that, they wanted to crucify the arbitrator. So they do not believe in collective bargaining and allowing the cost of living, etc., to inform the kind of wages and salaries they deliver. Now, the trade union movement has as one of its weapons strike action. And the People's Progressive Party does everything to ensure that they use that option. All I would say as leading the opposition, we will support strike action against the government because the teachers and all public servants deserve better treatment. And that is why we said that we will focus on a people-centered program to ensure we improve the lives of our people. But when you want to treat nurses in the way you are treating them, doctors in the way, teachers in the way you are treating them, then you yourself, you're looking for strike action. And like I said before, the government approach clearly, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing is wrong. And that is why they are separating the discipline services to be able to use the discipline services against the teachers. They could charge me like they did with Agunse. But I would say to the Ghana Defense Force and to the Ghana Police Force, you should not be used by the People's Progressive Party against other public servants. You are the only legitimate institution that has the power to use force, but it should be used within the confines of the law and not against the workers of this country, as this government is wont to do. And so strike action is an option which the opposition will support.
Thank
I
you.
another question. I'm just be done with it. What's going on in Linden, Mr. North? No, I'm sorry, not Linden, Region 9. We started the dismantling of that regional office. Can you say what has happened since? Have you fully reoccupied the building? Is it still, are you still getting threats, or what's the situation?
The government has been using force. I think they went into the building while people weren't there, and they have occupied it. We are taking a number of action against them. But as far as I know, they have charged 2 persons alleging that they lash off a padlock because they apparently put on the lock on the building and went somewhere. And by the time they come back, the government had invaded the building and are trespassing. We are dealing with that issue.
Can you say who is currently occupying the building? Is it persons from LETEM, or is it agents of the government?
As I gather, it's agents of the government. And from my last information, they have put the contractor to redo the building.
So you have no access to the building currently?
As far as in my recent report, no. But we're taking action against them for trespassing.
I'm sorry for all the questions, but is this by way of a police report? How are you planning to take action against them?
We have done all the police report, etc. When that action is taken, you will hear about it. But we are taking action on it.
Thank you.
I think also it needs to be noted that the government, I spoke to one government minister yesterday, and I didn't call. And I told him that the government seems to be pushing for a physical confrontation, and to let him know we're not short on people that could deal with them in a physical confrontation. But we don't believe it is in the best interest of the people at this time. And therefore, we have said to them, they need to back off.
All right. Thank you. I see the hand of Mr. Dennis Shabroff.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Can Ms. McDonald please say at this stage, given where the discussions are with the government, what exactly are the union's specific demands for the teachers?
Like everything else, the union's demands were proposed in 2020, resubmitted in 2020, resubmitted 2021, 22, everything else. The demands are, like I said, we have crafted a document that talks about teachers' welfare, which would be non-salaries benefits and salaries benefits. Of course, we're talking about increases in salaries. We're looking at increases in allowances for additional qualification. We're looking at risk allowances for our teachers, taking into consideration all that has been happening over the years to teachers when they're in schools. Outside of that, teachers who live on campuses where there are dorms, they have to perform duties at nights, during the vacation, and at other times. And so those are going to be financial issues that we have proposed. The other issues that we've looked at are the maternal benefits for teachers, where we are extending that to fathers too, where we want to have implemented that 6 months maternity leave for teachers who would have had cesarean and are having complications. We've looked at the housing project. As a matter of fact, that housing project was there since 2006, where we ask for a revolving housing project and that house lots be given to teachers in other areas across this country. Those have never ever been brought to light, or we have not been able to successfully bring that on board, except for when the coalition came into office. The coalition decided at that time they were going to put together a unit at the Ministry of Education to deal specifically with the housing revolving project. By that time, we would have already been able to acquire $200 million. It's even more now. What stalled that project during the 2015-2020 period is that on our approach to the commercial banks, they've all been asking for interest, for the teachers to pay interest on the monies that we are asking them to administer this project. That didn't go down well with us because rather than the teachers having to pay the same interest as if you were just walking off the road to go to a commercial bank, we said it would be unfair to our teachers. So that never came off. And that's where the coalition decided at the Ministry of Education, we were going to have this unit. Every aspect was put in place to have that unit in operation. But when the PPP came into office in 2020, they disbanded that approach. We had another offer to them where we were going to use the Guyana Public Service Credit Union to administer this project. They've also thrown that aside. So those are some of the issues that we have in that proposal and quite a lot more that I would not want to discuss down here before because the agreement is not yet signed. So I wouldn't want to share those. But those are all some of the issues we have in our proposal. And let me say to you, the president went to Port Kaituma just recently, where he met with other residents, including teachers. And he gave this big, glorious announcement that the government has a comprehensive package that they are going to be offering teachers, which includes house lots and housing revolving project. Well, I want to say to all who are listening at this time, again, the president is operating like Columbus's little brother who has now discovered that, which is saying clearly to us that he did not even take time off to read the document that was sent to him on several occasions by the Guyana Teachers Union.
Thank you.
But Ms. McDonald, during the time that you seem not to be making any headway with the government, why not tell us some actual figures as far as salaries and allowances are concerned? So we get a clear idea, what are your demands?
All right, I can safely say to you that our demands in terms of salary increases, it's in the double figure. I can say that much to you. I can say to you that in the last agreement, we had $10,000, $7,000 for certificate in education, $8,000 for certificate in education. You had a $10,000, there was a $15,000, a $25,000, and that's for persons who have masters, a $35,000 for doctorate. But those have all been increased. We've also looked at the management certificate program that teachers are doing, and we have asked that a financial figure be added to that, which is about $10,000. We've also looked at the issue of the clothing allowance, which is $8,000, and we've increased that. And those are just the askings, very, very simple askings that we're asking. When we compare that to what the ministers are doing in their ministries, the wanton squandering of monies in the ministries by ministers, jumping here, there, chartering planes to go just to a point to deliver what, maybe not dishwashing, disinfect hand sanitizers and the cash grants and so on. They can afford to offer teachers what we're asking. All that we're saying at this time is that we don't want to be brought on the same level with our counterparts in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in the Bahamas, or in Bermuda. We just want to ensure that our teachers are given a livable wage.
What's the secrecy though, Ms. McDonald? I'm trying to get from you, you're saying that you're making demands, but you don't have any specifics as far as salaries are concerned. Why are you not providing the information?
As soon as we have a press conference at the GTU, we'll again provide the media with a copy of that agreement, that proposal, sorry.
Thank you. I see the hand of Ms. Davina.
Good day, everyone. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I have a few questions for Mr. Norton. Sir, I'd like to know your position on the fifth project that the government has just approved for ExxonMobil in the Scarborough Block, and you do have a few others.
Could you repeat the question?
And we're getting a feedback from your line.
My apologies. Can you hear me clearer now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I have a few questions for Mr. Norton. Firstly, sir, I'd like your position on the fifth project approved for ExxonMobil in the Stabroek Block.
And I'll ask Elson to begin, and then I will fit in because he has been looking specifically at it.
Thank you very much for the question, Davina. So we've seen yet another approval of a project. This comes within the context of the ongoing court case regarding coverage, full liability coverage for in the event of any oil spill offshore Guyana. And really what one would think is that given that we're looking at yet another approval, the government would be in a strong position to advocate for Guyana's environmental rights and to ensure that our country's interests are protected in this particular case. Of course, the government has gone in the other direction, acting in a totally unpatriotic manner and actually looking to appeal Justice Kissoon's decision. And so it is truly tragic that the government seems not to understand that Guyana is a country that is a major oil producer, that its duties are to protect the rights of Guyanese. Rather, it is intent on making Guyana into some sort of banana republic where rule of law is not followed, rather than enforcing legitimate rights of Guyanese.
If I may add something, Davina, to your question, and to elaborate some more, the Guyanese people must be on the lookout because we see the direction in which the government is going, and we have also taken note of the judicial review and what is happening in the judiciary. And we as Guyanese people must ensure that the government does not operate in a manner where they may want to attempt to go back on this environmental permit, because this permit is what is binding SO Exploration and Production Guyana Limited, and also what is attracting the court attention and the rulings and so on for the benefit of the Guyanese people. So I just want us to be very, very aware of the situation. I want to reiterate also for the benefit of the Guyanese people so that they will understand and not fall prey to the People's Progressive Party and their stupidity. The issue here has nothing to do with insurance. I see the PPP trying to hammer home that point still. And perhaps it may find favor with the gullible people, but I know majority, if not all of our Guyanese brothers and sisters are not gullible. And they understand that what is enshrined in that environmental permit is really an assurance from EEPGL that if anything is to happen that is bad in nature relative to an oil spill or the likes, that the cleanup exercise will be foot primarily by EEPGL and their parent company, and not a single cent must be used from the Guyanese people. That is what is clear, a simple assurance. And we need to ensure that we be vigilant and we seek to ensure that the government doesn't attempt in any way, shape, or form to change or divert from that environmental permit and what was signed as the agreement.
It is important to note that the law is clear that we should protect the interests of the people of Guyana. I've said that from the inception. And therefore, we will always be on the side that supports the implementation of the law. We believe, Parajak, there is a sellout. There is no way any sane person will have a parent company guarantee. You have a judge rule that it is in keeping with the law and you are fighting to appeal it. It is either he is a sellout, or in his attempt to not obtain the anger of ExxonMobil, he is trying to appear as somebody who was fighting to protect the company's interests, and then he had no choice because the court ruled. It could be because he's a very devious politician. So it could be he's on that devious road. And he's probably hoping that this appeal will be thrown out. When it goes to the CCJ, it will be thrown out. But then he could go and say, I tried. It's the courts. Now, that is a devious approach. What needs to be done is to recognize that our laws are there. A judge would have ruled. The rule is in favor of the people of Guyana. And mind you, we all agree that ExxonMobil invested in Guyana and they need returns on their investment. But that doesn't demand Barajak. They were selling us out so that he could look good and continue whatever is happening in nice for him. And so our position continues to be everything should happen within the confines of the law. And Barajak, they attempt to fabricate this nonsense about unlimited insurance is garbage. It has nothing to do, when he's talking about how you're going to calculate the premium, again, it seems to suggest that something is wrong with him mentally. You do not have to calculate a premium if there isn't an insurance. This is a parent company guarantee that if a spill or any other thing occur, the responsibility devolves on the parent company. It is as simple as that. And that is the position we support.
And Divina, I want to add, just for clarity, I know the leader said it just now, but for clarity, the APNU AFC is not anti-development. We're not anti-wealth for the Guyanese people. We want development, we welcome it, we believe it will assist our people to move from one stage to a better stage in their life, yes. But there must be protective measures that give the Guyanese people that assurance that in the event of an unfortunate act, we will not suffer the consequences. We will not be the ones to punish. We will not be the ones to have to be faced with these kind of burden. And I believe that if the People's Progressive Party really and truly care for the Guyanese people, more so the hard-working Guyanese people, the poor people who are trying to lift their lives from one level to another, he will ensure, the People's Progressive Party, Jadney and his cronies, they will ensure that they act within the best interest, first and foremost, of the Guyanese people. And then we can look at the others. But the priority must always be, as representatives of the people themselves.
Sean, may I add, ExxonMobil has the capacity to represent itself. There's no doubt that it has the capacity. So I don't understand why is it Barajak Deo has to believe he has to represent their interests. His function is to represent, first of all, promote and protect the Constitution of Guyana, promote the interests of the people of Guyana, and act in a way that will benefit the people of Guyana, rather than appearing as if you have some special interest in ExxonMobil, that you have to pursue their interests and appeal a matter. I could have understood if ExxonMobil said, okay, we'll be a party, we can appeal. But when the company that is involved doesn't appeal, and the government led by, I don't know what to describe him, I've run out of adjectives, then it's really a serious issue.
Yeah, just to build off of what the leader and Ganesh were saying there, if the PPP wants to convince Guyanese that they're not to sell out, what they need to say is, whether or not and to what extent they're being funded by any oil company, if they want to convince Guyanese that they're not a sellout, because their actions are utterly bizarre and they're using taxpayer money to carry out these appeals. That is one thing that is vital. The other thing that we want to help Guyanese to understand, and my friend Ganesh was pointing to this, is we are putting our natural resources fund, our sovereign wealth fund, our hard-earned savings at risk with the government's approach here. Even when the EPA comes out to highlight how it intends to approach an oil spill and any costs that go beyond the existing insurance amounts, you're hearing things like next steps and sort of the vague language that in the course of an oil spill, which is a very time-sensitive issue, and where rapid and decisive action is required, might result in delay and disruption tactics and shifting of blame while the oil is spilling. And so this exposes the country to very serious issues, because obviously someone will have to pay for this cleanup action and to have to pay for whatever damages occur. And so it could be that our sovereign wealth fund, our natural resources fund, will have to be drained to deal with these issues, because the EPA has taken a stance that opens us up to all sorts of delay tactics and problems in the course of a disaster.
Additionally, if one accepts that this is a democratic society, I mean, I know it isn't, but let's, for the sake of argument, assume that it's a democratic society. In a democratic society, there is a role for civil society. Civil society pursues different interests to the government, to the political parties. Here is a case where civil society actors felt that the law exists, but it isn't being enforced, and they would have brought a legal action. And this legal action bear fruit. So you cannot turn and say, well, it is the opposition that did it. You cannot say it was politically motivated. You should know that it is civil society and that civil society has its interests. In this case, the interests of civil society and the wider society, the interests coincide. The government should recognize that this is a matter that the Guyanese people are united on, and the only opponent to it seems to be the PPP government, and that is a terrible sign. As government, as opposition, we are obligated to promote the interests of the people of Guyana. It is not regularly that we find a united front on an issue. And on this occasion, there is a united front. And the government, rather than operating like a democratic society, in a democratic society, the government is responsive to the concerns of the people. And here, all the people except you are saying you're going in the wrong direction, but then you decide you will go down that road, nevertheless, against the wishes of the people. I believe this will have serious consequences for the government going forward.
We have to also, just now, one moment, this thought just crossed my mind. We have to also take into account the amount of millions that will be spent on legal fees to appeal, and then I assume that they will take it to the CCJ when they lose at the appeals court too. But I noted that I think it is lawyer Sanjeev Datadin, who is a sitting member of parliament for the People's Progressive Party, that is representing EPA's interests. And I also took note of the fact that the government of Guyana, separate from the EPA, is asking to join in this matter as a party to express. I thought EPA was representing the country, Guyana, so I found it a little strange. But I'm no lawyer by profession, so perhaps that can be explained by the legal minds. But it really put me to think that you have EPA, which is an agency within the government of Guyana as a state agency, so to speak. And you also have the government of Guyana seeking to join the party separate. And I noticed also Exxon signaled their intent to join. So we will have to look at the millions that will be spent there too, because if I'm to juxtapose that to what Coretta was talking earlier about concerning their increases for teachers, we know nurses, doctors, our disciplinary service men and women, and the working class, we are all looking for a better life for them. And perhaps government should spend the money wiser and basically, as I said in the National Assembly, respect the ruling of Justice Sandil Kisoon, let the EEPGL comply, and let us go forward with that in mind so that we can have development. If you are so comfortable that you have the best, and I was making this point to Elson a couple of days back, if you are so comfortable that you have the best system in place and that you believe that you can handle the production side of what is happening offshore Guyana, then you should not have a problem assuring the Guyanese that in the event of an unfortunate activity, you will cover it. Nothing is wrong with that. Simple as that.
If I can add one last thing. This issue, as the leader rightfully said, has grabbed the attention of the entire nation, and people of all walks of life and across the political divide. And as such, the deafening silence of the president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana is noted. And so I want to call on the media to call out President Irfanali on this issue and ensure that he steps up and do the right thing. He must rally his troops in the direction of honoring and respecting the decision of the courts, lest he will be seen as a puppet of Bara Jagdeo.
Thank you very much. Can I go ahead with my second question now?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Mr. Norton, I know you guys addressed the environmental aspects of this project, but on the fiscal side, sir, are you comfortable with the fact that water has been approved with no additional value to Guyana? And do you believe government should approve more projects with the same terms signed by the coalition?
I would say to you that we thought it was a good opportunity to get more benefit from Guyana. I know internally we have sat and we have agreed on a response, and before long there will be a comment indicating clearly what our position is. But we do believe that the circumstances have changed. When the first agreement was signed, we had a totally different environment. We didn't know we had oil, or even if we knew, it was mere speculation. It was confirmed in 2016. We signed an agreement. Many people believe that it wasn't the best, though we had gotten an increase in royalty, etc. And many of us do believe that with this new environment where you're much surer, then we should have done more to get more out of this. I am one who also believe in ring fencing. As a lecturer at the University of Guyana, I taught students in international political economy about how multinationals operate. And while we believe they have the right to get their profits, etc., we also have to take cognizance of the fact that these institutions are not priests. They are people pursuing highest profits. And we have got to do the things to ensure that we get the best in terms of our profit, the benefits from the profits of oil. And so there were some other measures we would have liked to see, including some amount of ring fencing, but I shouldn't say some amount, ring fencing, which would permit us to separate the various agreements and to increase our benefits.
Thank you.
Davina, I want to add to that and to say that one way of the Guyanese people guaranteeing or maximizing or ensuring that our profit, what we get as the Guyanese people from this oil production, is maximum to our benefit from all that is happening, is that we have to have that assurance that whatever is cost oil, the expenses associated with cost oil, is verified. I stand corrected. Perhaps Elson, who has better knowledge, can guide me, or even anybody out there who has better knowledge. But my understanding is that we don't have any mechanism in place, any sort of audit in place, any sort of check and balance in place to verify that what is deemed cost oil is actually cost oil. I think the arrangement in place is that 75% of what is produced goes towards cost oil, and the 25% that remains is dubbed profit oil, and that is what is divided into half, which is the 12.5%, and then you add the 2% royalty to that. The 75% that is capped as cost oil ought to be verified. Is there a situation, and perhaps this can be answered, is there a situation where cost oil really exceeds 75% monthly, but because there is this cap on 75% that the expense rolls over into the other month? That's another question we have to ask ourselves. Let's assume that for the month of May, we're in May, that EEPGL says, gives us a document, and these information must be released. We must get these information. If EEPGL says that, okay, our expense for May is 80% of the production, so they will cap it at 75. The 25% will be divided in half. We will get our 12.5%. But that 5% extra for cost oil that took it to that they said was 80%, that 5%, is it going to roll over now into June month and then categorize it there as cost oil also? These are things that ought to be looked at carefully, and I maintain, and I go back to the position I said earlier, that in order for us to know definitively what is the maximum benefit for Guyanese, there must be checks and balances in place where the Guyanese people can verify that what is the claim as cost oil is actually the cost for production.
Additionally, a clear indication that the government isn't serious about us benefiting is their human resource policy. You're not seeing the training of people or the engagement of the skills in the diaspora or wherever to enable us to do what we should do. If this government was serious about us getting our profits, then one of the things they would have done is institutional building, where you build the capacity of the institution to monitor both offshore and here what is happening, so you're in a better position to determine what is cost oil and what is profit oil. Now, clearly, the government is not building capacity, and since they are not building capacity, even if you bring new agreements and you put these mechanisms in place, we will still lack the capacity to monitor, evaluate, and deal with the issues, because you're not doing the human resource development that is needed to ensure we protect our national patrimony.
Davina, as we contemplate the issue of the approval of further developments, what we've said, and you can look at previous press releases, is that we need to intelligently space out these developments, because we need some time as a country to build our capacity, to ensure that we have the appropriate auditing capacity, to ensure that we have trained personnel, and to ensure that we're not going to be suffering losses due to a lack of preparedness or negligence by the government. we'll remind the Guyanese public that it took tremendous pressure from the opposition and civil society to even get the government to audit, to do the most recent audit of the offshore oil expenses. That is a terrible sign. And now that we see further approvals, we see the government rushing ahead and rushing to defend the interests of the oil company, rather than looking at safeguarding legitimate interests of Guyanese. I would remind you, it is a perfectly legitimate right of Guyanese to have an audit done and to have an audit be done on time. And so what we're saying essentially is we need to intelligently look at these, at spacing out these developments. We need to work along with the operator to ensure that we can be speaking the same language, so to speak. And that way we'll be able to benefit. That's one of the ways that we'll be able to benefit as much as we can from the revenues in the industry.
All right. I just want to note, Davina, you have one other question. I think you said we have two other questions to be asked, and we're running sharp on time here. We're basically out of time. So let's go.
Okay, Mr. Norton, I didn't get your definitive answer regarding whether government should approve more projects with the same terms signed by the coalition. Can you give me your position on that very quickly before I move on to my other question?
I think I would have answered the question, but like I said before, first, Elson just said we need to space them out. We don't think that we should run ahead and do these things because we lack the institutional capacity. We have to build institutional capacity. And so I believe that we need to, in a structured way, do development, but not run approving everything one after the other without the capacity to manage, monitor, evaluate, and ensure we get the best for ourselves.
Thank you.
Okay, finally, Mr. Norton, you said you weren't in favor of renegotiation and that you
I said what?
looking for more time.
I said what?
But you weren't in favor of renegotiation of the contract.
I have never
said
said I was not in favor of anything like you say. Let me remind you what was said. When this debate started, people were talking about renegotiation as you on the one side will arbitrarily change the contract. I said then, if that is what renegotiation means, I wouldn't be part of it. I proceeded to say, and I actually corrected Kaicho News when they said I used the word renegotiation. I then proceeded to be one of the persons that identified that in the contract, there is a mechanism for Exxon and the government to engage and make changes to the contract. I've always held the view that the Guyanese people must benefit, and within the confines of the law, we must make changes and ensure the people of Guyana benefit. I have objected to the use of the word renegotiation in the context in which it was placed when I was first asked the question more than a year ago. So I hope context is given to it, and that clarifies.
Okay, so what are some of the things that you would wish to renegotiate in the contract outside of, well, you mentioned ring fencing, but what are some of the additional stuff that you would be looking for?
We have looked at these issues, and when we are ready, we are a political party. We will head to an election. We have to time when we say what. And when we begin to do our election campaign, etc., we will state clearly what is it we intend to do, how we intend to do it, and what changes we think are needed in certain areas.
All right.
Like I've just signaled to you, we see no problem with a proper system of ring fencing.
All right, thank you. I see the hand of Kiana Wilberg. You can go
Hi,
ahead.
good afternoon.
Good
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, Mr. Norton, I just wanted to follow up quickly on my colleague's last question. Why not inform the nation if you're going to go as far as to say that you believe ring fencing is an issue that needs to be addressed? what is preventing you? I'm trying to understand the reasoning behind withholding from your supporters and other members of the populace other areas of this contract that's been in the open, that has been heavily criticized over the years. What's the basis for withholding that information or not disclosing it to the public now? And for my substantive questions, just three. We're seeing a number of strategic alliances between the government and India, Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia. What specific best practices would you wish to see the government adopt from these nations? That's one. Two, Guyana's gas reserves are well known. What do you believe is the best strategy to be taken to maximize and monetize these resources? And have you had discussions with Exxon on this matter? And thirdly, the local content legislation has been in the public domain for over a year, and government has said it's commencing with a review. What are some of the critical amendments you wish to see to this legislation?
As a party, we are working on our policy positions. While the newspaper has the right to ask whichever question it wants, as a party, we have the right to time when we respond to achieve the objectives that we need to achieve. And so the party at some stage, and not very far, will present a comprehensive policy position on the environment, on oil and gas, and we will do the same with health and education. So the question of the timing, as I understand it, is the reserve of us. And as a political party, you have to be strategic and tactical. We will determine the strategy for ourselves. We understand that newspapers have interests, that they want things that will sell it. But we also understand that we have our constituency, and we have to, first of all, educate them before we actually say to the world. Like, for instance, we are focusing a lot now on our people-centered strategy as we go to, we talk to groups, we explain it to them, etc. If you go ahead and speak on issues before people comprehend them in the way that you want them as a political party, you could very well end up in a situation where you're in one direction and your base is in another direction. So that is our reserve. As it relates to the links you're talking about, I think the government, first of all, needs to outline a foreign policy. They seem to have no foreign policy. Now, it is well known that your national interests should determine your foreign policy positions. What I'm seeing from the government is jumping here, hopping here, but not a clear foreign policy position. For instance, what is the foreign policy position of the government as it relates to oil and gas in relating to the United States, the United Kingdom, many of whom are also taking on their own oil companies to benefit. So to me, there is an absence of a clear foreign policy position. And again, when we come to outline our foreign policy position, all of these factors will be put in place. But I do not see what benefits we will derive from just pushing out all of these without context and not at the time we think they should be put out. So we will, at some stage, I can say to you, we have an oil and gas group within the party that would have done the work. There is documentation there, but we will decide when we do what.
All right.
Excuse me, I asked two other questions in addition to the one about the links between India, Guyana, Qatar, UAE, etc. I also asked about the strategy the opposition has, which you believe would be best in maximizing and monetizing our gas resources. And I also asked about the critical amendments, even if you don't want to outline all of your cards at this point in time, can you say what two amendments you would like to see made to the local council legislation to increase benefits for citizens. And on the, just a quick comment, you noted that I just wanted to make very clear that none of my questions are being asked because there is some intention of me to do a story to sell papers. I do take offense with that line of questioning or reasoning. That is not what I'm doing.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make that very clear.
First of all, let me make
The
it.
questions are being asked because of the statements being made and my responsibility to inform the nation of what the opposition is really thinking from a policy perspective.
Good. First of all, I don't know what you inferred, but I didn't imply that. What I was implying, and I hope you infer, is that as a party, we have to time when we say what. I also hope you understand that we as a party know that newspapers have their interests, political parties have their interests, and when we are operating, we have to focus on our interests. What you infer to me is not what I set out to say. I think I have answered the questions by saying that the party will produce a policy position on the oil and gas sector and the environment. And at the time when we do that, you will have the opportunity to inform the entire nation as to what are our views on that. For instance, if you want me to tell you what amendments that we intend to make, are you talking about proposing to the parliament or when we're in government? We have to decide that and decide if we're going to take amendments to the parliament or we'll wait until government. All of those things are judgments that a political leader and a political party will have to make. And when we make those judgments and we decide these are the things we are going to do, we are going to do them.
All right, thank you. Our final question, because this person's hand has been off, I'll ask that they provide the media house. Is Ms. Susan Wickham.
Hi, good day, everyone. This is Suan Wickham, and I am from the Guyana Standard.
Okay.
So I have one question, and it can be answered by either Mr. Lowe or Mr. Martin.
Go ahead.
Speak at his press conference, the Vice President noted, you're hearing me properly?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so last week at this press conference, the Vice President noted that the opposition would have criticized the new model PSA firstly, and the data protection bill. However, the government is still awaiting submissions with your recommendations and possible changes. So can you say firstly if the opposition does intend to make submissions on either of these matters? And can you maybe give us an idea of what these recommendations would be?
Now, again, the opposition doesn't operate in a vacuum. We have engaged persons involved in data. We did say the 2 weeks sometimes are too short for these things. We're engaging a number of people, getting various perspectives before we say this is what we'll do. We have the option of doing it at the level of parliament or doing it before. At present, we continue to engage stakeholders, and once we complete that, we will say exactly what is it we intend. Now, when we did say that 2 weeks is not adequate for consultation, we were serious. The government makes decisions, in my opinion, wildly. It's not a case where they engage, get different perspectives, and then formulate policies in the way that it should. Let's take, for instance, the very thing we were talking about with chicken. If this government had engaged widely, they would have known that just talking about a ban can't solve the problem. And let us assume we had put our position out there. They would have come as if it is their position. as they have done on numerous occasions, we have got to do our work in a structured way. We have inputs from many people in data processing, and at the right time again, we are going to outline our positions. For instance, at present, we are working on clear policy positions for health. Should we just throw them out there, or as a political party, prepared to sell them to the population in a way that we can influence them, that we are people that are prepared as a government to take over government? We will do these things in a structured way, and we will put our positions at the forums we think they need to be done and at a time when we think they should be done. I want to remind you, people were asking about local government, and when we say to them, we're concerned about X, Y, and Z, people ask questions and we say at the right time we will speak. Let me remind you what happened. What happened is the government went ahead, violated all the rules as they relate to the boundaries. And had we said that then, they would have changed it and operated as if they know and they did the right thing. When we wait and then filed the legal action, they then were forced to push back the elections and come with new things, which we have challenged, and we wait to see what will happen on the 30th. I'm saying to you, political parties have got to be strategic. I appreciate the role of the press in wanting to know, but we also have the right to decide when we will say what for maximum effect. Remember, we also have to educate the people we expect to support us when we take our positions.
Thank you very much for the question there. One of the things that we want to make sure is highlighted, because it seems to sometimes be missed, is that the government is not genuine in saying that it has extent, that they're going to continue to listen to submissions regarding this new model PSA. We want to remind Guyanese that when it came to the passage of the Natural Resources Fund Act, the government provided just a mere 2 weeks for the public to review that. We warned that the government would rush the new model PSA through, not providing that we warned that they would not provide Guyanese an ample opportunity to look at this. And what happened? 2 weeks. For the government to come to now and say that they are now willing to listen to additional submissions is an admission that that 2 weeks was ridiculous from the start. And so what did we say regarding this 2 weeks? We said that for all significant bills, significant agreements, we should have a standard period of time that we provide to the public to look at these sorts of documents and provide submissions. Again, we reiterate, Guyana is not Georgetown. People need to be given ample time to look at these documents and provide those submissions. And so the government is not genuine, is not serious about when it says it is going to listen to further submissions. Rather, this is a political ploy. If they were serious, they would never have given 2 weeks as the time period in the first place.
Could I also point out, I turn to the chicken issue because it illustrates the incompetence of the government and its approach. In speaking to people in chicken, you had to try and speak to people all across the country. There were people who said they agree with the ban. And when you raise questions about the negative impact of the ban, some of them didn't address it. Then there were those who were against a ban and saying you need pure fiscal and other measures. There were those who just saw banning and utilizing it in a way to say it only produced negatives. You as a political party, or we as a political party, have to listen to all of these views, then engage our technical people, and then come up with the approach and the language to ensure that we influence policy in the right direction. And that is why today we didn't say, oh, we agree with the ban, we disagree we give you clear policy positions that will deal with the issue. Policy formulation and implementation is a process. You engage people, you get their views, you get feedback. Based on the feedback, you go back to people, you get other dimensions, you then look at the options, and then you will come up with what are the best options to be utilized. And then you can say effectively, these are the policy directions we will go. Even in oil and gas, we as a party don't accept anybody has the solution for all of these problems. There were many countries before us that think they were doing well and ended up in problems. We therefore, in dealing with oil and gas, have to research and look at a number of options so that when we put a position, it is a well-informed position. Even though Barry Jagdeo attempts to suggest that he's intelligent, you must observe that he makes no comments of substance. He abuses, but when it comes to laying out policy options and looking at what option will produce what positive and what negatives, you don't get that from him. Our intention is not to be like a Barry Jagdeo. We want to come over as people who understand policy formulation and implementation. We will take our time, do our work, and when we make pronouncement, there will be proper policy pronouncement that will redound to the benefit of the people of Guyana.
Thank you. All right. I think
Is it possible I could ask a follow-up based on what was said by Mr. Lowe and Mr. Norton?
go ahead quickly.
Okay, so two main things would have come out of what you guys said. Firstly, Mr. Lowe would have said that the government isn't genuine when it says that it's still allowing submissions. So we would want to know how that determination could be made if an attempt isn't made to make a submission, because you can't say that they're not serious about taking more submissions if you haven't made one yet. And secondly, given that they gave this unofficial extension, I would say, it is important that we get somewhat of an estimate as to when you guys would make a submission, because time will end up running out and they will make a finalized decision. And then you don't want to have to say after that, hey, we didn't get a chance to submit, and they still give some time for you to make that submission.
In a country where you deal with the opposition, you don't just say, I give you 2 weeks. You engage the opposition. The opposition can sit with you with their professionals, and we can negotiate. Look at what happens in the United States. Look at what happens in England. You cannot tell me, as a serious opposition, that you give me 2 weeks and I must submit to you. When you would have taken the positive of our submissions and utilize it, and then by your nature, don't even give credit, then what happens? May I point out to you, we are not a political party that was born yesterday. I have been in politics since 1972. I have engaged and negotiated with the PPP. And I'm saying to you without fear of successful contradiction, they are not genuine. I don't want to spend the time giving you the examples, but under Robert Corbyn, they asked us to consult on the Ethnic Relations Commission. We prepared a document, comprehensive, put it in the consultation. There were 21 more things to be implemented outside of just the Ethnic Relations Commission. They never did anything. And they continue to operate as if they didn't consult on that. I can give you numerous areas in which they put out things, and when you give positions, they ignore it. Our position is, as a government, they have obligation. As opposition, we have obligation. And we believe the correct thing to do, if you want these things, you can use, like we said, a special select committee, in which that committee, the public can become involved and give their position, like we did in constitutional reform years ago. The political parties could give a position. Is the government God that we got to give them a submission and then they come and tell us what they think about the submission? No, the people of Ghana must be able to scrutinize it. And so if you have a select committee that involves government and opposition, and the issues are there in the public domain, at the end of the process, the people will be educated and you'll be able to move forward. When you do what the PPP is doing, you are only excluding people. We have ongoing discussions on electoral reform. Find out about the government's attitude at the IRI negotiations, where we send representatives. So when we say that we can't trust their word, etc., we're not doing it from some vacuum. We're doing it based on their historical practices.
And we would again remind you, we said the government will rush this new model PSA through. Just give us a short period of time to look at it. The government went and did exactly that. We are very much accustomed to the way that they operate. And we would also ask a very obvious question. If it is that they want further submissions, why is it that there's an informal extension of this deadline? Any government that is listening to citizens, if it feels that further submissions are required, would say, all right, we're going to formally extend the deadline and so on and so forth. That is evidence as well that they are not serious and genuine. That is a classic example of it. Really, as well, what it points to is that you're dealing with a government that is extremely arrogant. It believes that it knows everything. It doesn't have to listen to the Guyanese people. And that's how we found ourselves where we are right now.
Thank you. All right. At this time, I want to thank our media houses and personnel for joining today's press conference, and to our viewers online. Do have a wonderful afternoon.
All right. Bring Rice Deal.
If I had a marathon, we bring right. Some question for right there. Yes, yeah, it's something you want to know. No, it didn't. I was talking because you didn't reach that point. Okay. I was controlling it.
I didn't know what
I blame us. You should have do it.
Yeah.
When I see the
I saw the thing stop, so I didn't know.
Like you move from the front yet.
But you know that's the approach. Put something out there, and you must run and get everything.
Yeah, it was not efficient today.
You ready for the next one?
You good? I reach home after 10 from when we go at 10 or after 11 from when we come back from Bourbon. I'm still tired, and tonight I got week out.
And especially the picture and slow again. I believe they always make me how. But they finally.